All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Let's get into it here. I got something a little bit different for you today. I'm going to react in real time to the media reacting to Trump's win and Kamala's loss. We got a bunch of clips here. I'm going to guess in advance that about 85% of them are going to infuriate me. Maybe there's a handful that are decent, but most of them, I bet I'm going to want to take a cheese grater to my nipples or shove my balls in a waffle iron because I'm sure everybody's learning the wrong lessons and advocating the wrong things in reaction to what happened here. So let's start with this CNN clip. Here they are reacting to Kamala's loss.
And I think there was this very powerful ad, the Republican Jewish Coalition, that was all over the airwaves. Yeah. A bunch of women sitting around, Jewish women, just saying, I can't stand him, but I felt like we were supporting Israel and we were stronger and we were tougher. And I think that resonates with people.
And then to your point, the ad that came out that was beating Kamala up around fear about Israel not being protected. There was never a response from the campaign on that, which I thought was a big mistake. Amanda Berman from Zioness had to raise money, run her own ads trying to fight back alone. That didn't work. So, but listen, you tied her to the economy, you tied her to Biden, you tied her to weird, and it was not a good
I agree with everything you're saying. I just didn't want to engage in the autopsy before before we've called the race and before she dropped out. But one thing on that, the answer on I can't think of anything offhand about where she would differ with Biden was disastrous, and there's no doubt about it.
Okay. I agree with Axelrod. That answer about, not knowing any area where she would break with Biden, that was horrible. Her biggest fault in this election is that she did not differentiate herself from Joe Biden, and she got punished for that. But the other stuff is mental. They're literally arguing Kamala Harris was too anti-Israel. Biden is arming and funding Israel as they committed genocide. Kamala's rhetoric was both sides' rhetoric while saying, hey, I'm always going to make sure Israel has the right to defend themselves. I'm always going to send them weapons. Okay, guys, look at the numbers. One of the few demographic groups where Kamala didn't lose support is actually Jewish Americans. One of the demographic groups where Democrats hemorrhaged support was Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. So in other words, they got the analysis exactly backwards. Like the thing that objectively, quantitatively hurt them more is putting a middle finger up to Arab Americans and Muslim Americans all across this country, right? And by the way, I also think it's condescending to assume, like, if Kamala had said, we should stop arming this genocidal government, that then Jewish Americans would abandon her. My guess is, again, the percentage of Jewish Americans that would have voted for her, even if she stood up against the massacre in Gaza, it still would have been a good percentage. She can hold the Jewish American vote and gain the Arab American and Muslim American vote. And by the way, just most important thing, do the ethically correct thing and morally correct thing. But no, their criticism is you weren't pro-Israel enough. Look at how this is like dead-eyed psychopath analysis, man. This is total like pundit brain garbage. The real world doesn't matter. Consequences of your actions don't matter. Rampant, wanton, aggressive violence doesn't matter. Hey, you should openly support the genocidal fascist more. That would have been more electorally viable for you, even though all the evidence says literally the exact opposite. And by the way, let's just be clear. And I hate to say it, but it's true. Even if Kamala was genuinely good on the issue of Palestine, which she wasn't, that still wouldn't have been enough for her to win the election. This wasn't a particularly close election. She got walloped, dog. So, and it sucks, but it's true. Even if her strategy was way better, it may not have been enough. It looked like this is just a backlash election. This is just a middle finger to the incumbent election, and she was tarred as the incumbent. So, God damn it. Again, the only point that's correct here is what Axelrod said about not distancing herself from Biden. If she was able to more effectively distance herself from Biden, maybe she would have performed a point and a half better. Maybe two. But even then, I still think it wouldn't look good for her because she got swept in the swing states. All right, let's see what else they got.
The question is what motivated it and whether she just felt she did not want to.
Loyalty.
Yes, loyalty. And so she should have just said, look, I'm grateful to him. I'm proud of many of the things we did together, and I'm not going to critique him I'm talking about the future, would have been a better answer.
Even that's not a good enough answer. Come on, guys. Who are we kidding? Who are we kidding? His approval rating was in the dumps. He became super unpopular, and you're tarred with what he did. I was wrong. I thought she'd be able to escape that. I thought people would look at her and say, she's a different person from Biden. She's never been at the top of the ticket, so I'm not going to blame her for everything Biden did. That's what I thought people would think, but it's just not. That's just not the case. They didn't think that. They tarred her with everything negative about Biden. So that's one. Blood pressure is officially rising. Let's see if it comes down or goes back up. Here we have MSNBC, Morning Joe, and Al Sharpton. Oh, boy. Let's see how this one goes.
I just say, Rev, really quickly, too. Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest. And they need to say, yes, there's misogyny. But it's not just misogyny from white men. Mm-hmm. It's misogyny from Hispanic men.
Right.
It's misogyny from black men. Things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a black woman as president of the United States. You know, the Democratic Party, I've always found when you're sitting around talking, they love to just sort of balkanize everybody into these separate groups and say, oh, white people don't like women and black people. No, it is time for the Democrats to say, okay, and you and I have talked about this before, a lot of Hispanic voters have problems with black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of,
with other Hispanics. You got some that don't like each other. And some of the most misogynist things I've heard going on this Get Out the Vote tour came from black men. I mean, misogynist things. So you're absolutely right. It's not simplistic. And we've got to have real honest conversations about it.
Real honest conversation.
All right, look, was gender a potential factor in this election? Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's a potential factor. Do we have data to back that up? No, not necessarily. It's kind of a hard thing to test for. But is it possible it's a factor? Yeah. I mean, look, in 2016, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's because Hillary's a woman that she lost. And I was on the front line saying that is absolutely not true. She was just a really, really bad candidate, right? But Kamala did run a better campaign than Hillary did in 2016, and Trump ran a worse campaign than he did in 2016, and Trump won and Kamala lost. So is it okay to have that conversation? Yes, it is. But is it a helpful thing to talk about right now? Basically, the reaction to Kamala losing is literally to directly point fingers at black men and Hispanic men and be like, hey, you're fucking bigots. I'm not sure that's the way to go. Look, maybe I'm naive, right? But Barack Obama was able to become president twice. He won in 2008, he won in 2012. Before that election, people said a black man would never get elected in this country. Then a black man got elected easily twice. Was gender a factor in this race? Potentially, sure. But does that mean that we're doomed to that in perpetuity? No, I don't think that's true at all. And I do think there will eventually be a female candidate who basically overrides all of the obstacles and ends up winning anyway. And I think when that candidate comes around, you're going to see black men, Hispanic men, etc., they will break for that candidate, right? And right now you could say, oh, I think you're all sexist, but in that scenario, all of a sudden it would be, oh, I guess we're a post-gender politics America or whatever. Just like we became a post-racial country after Obama. Well, again, that didn't last very long, right? The post-racial stuff did not last very long. And in a scenario, there's a woman president, the post-gender stuff wouldn't last very long. Look, is it potentially a factor? Sure. But is it something to be talking about right now and pointing fingers at people who didn't vote for your candidate and basically say, fuck you, you're a sexist? It's just, it's not going to work. It's not going to get more people on your side. It's not particularly productive, right? So, again, I'm not against having the conversation about how much gender played a role, but the way he presents it, where he just basically flat out says, like, all of the Hispanic men who voted for Trump are sexist, all the black men who voted for Trump are sexist. By the way, I should point out, it is true that there was a big change in the numbers with Hispanics. Way more Hispanics went for Trump this time than previously, which, by the way, is kind of crazy that he's running on mass deportation, and in his mind, he's definitely thinking of Hispanics, and a lot of Hispanics voted for him. I mean, that's kind of crazy. But if from the numbers I've seen, it doesn't look like there was that much of a shift with black men, if any at all, right? So, I don't know, to point the finger at black men when they voted at a much lower clip, too, compared to Hispanic men, that seems wrong. But also, again, just the conversation doesn't seem particularly productive, and it doesn't get us anywhere. Just be like, what the real problem here is sexism. there are like 17 other colossal elephant in the room problems that are more pertinent, more relevant, more important, and we should address before we get to that, right? So again, I'm not against having the conversation, but it seems particularly unproductive and unhelpful to basically have after your candidate lost, your conversation just like, well, all these people are just fucking sexist assholes. I don't know, man. I don't know. It would be interesting to actually interview all these people and ask them why they did what they did. Maybe with some small percentage, they'd be like, yeah, I don't want a woman leading. But I'm guessing a lot of other ones had other different reasons for doing what they did. All right, let's get some more here. So here we go. This is CNN.
I think if you are trying to find a single reason why Donald Trump has overperformed with younger voters relative to past elections for Republicans, I think the divide I see in polls around foreign policy and the role of America in the world is no longer a left-right divide. It is a younger, older divide. If you are under the age of 40, you don't remember a time when America projecting its power in the world led to anything good. And so Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, when they get up and they talk about, warmongers, and they sound like they're Code Pink people from 2004, we've had a complete inversion of the way we talk about America in the world, the use of the military, et cetera. It's totally a generational divide, and the parties have completely flipped.
Look, it's a fair point from a messaging perspective, but if you're in the media, it's incumbent on you to tell people the truth. And this is where the media let us down, and this is where the media failed us, is that, yes, Trump would oftentimes say, I started no new wars, I'm against the wars. He would say that all the time. And the media would never do what I did on this show, which is just to say, wait, you're a fucking liar. You're a war criminal and a neocon and a war hawk. You say you started no new wars, but you increased the drone war by 432%. You had a 330% increase in Afghan civilian deaths under your administration. You bombed Syria twice. You bombed Somalia. You kept us in Iraq. You kept us in Afghanistan. You say you want to start a war with Mexico in your second term, and you want to categorize the drug cartels as terrorist organizations and airstrike them. You illegally assassinated a top Iranian commander on the ground. You ripped up the Iran agreement. Okay, if you're in the media, I don't mind her having this analysis, right? Like, oh, Trump said more anti-war things, and maybe that's one of the reasons why young people supported him more than you would expect. It's fine to have that analysis. In fact, I think that's a relatively reasonable analysis. But it's also incumbent on you in the media to point out, hey, we failed the American people on that front. Because the fact of the matter is he says he's anti-war. He's not anti-war. And by the way, it was the media that shit on Joe Biden when he pulled out of Afghanistan. His approval rating took a plunge because he pulled out of Afghanistan and everybody in the media was shitting on him. Right? He also nearly eliminated the drone war, got zero credit for it in the media. So, that's my beef to pick with that argument. And look, I mean, we had this conversation the other day, but Trump did chip away in many demographic groups you wouldn't expect. And did his podcast sphere approach actually work? It looks like it probably did help. When you have Trump going on Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan and J.D. Vance goes on Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan and all these things, you kind of laugh at it and scoff at it and be like, these guys are unserious and they don't know policy and they're giving these politicians fluff jobs. That's all true, but it humanized them to a degree where there were enough young people and enough people in groups that don't normally vote Republican to go, okay, I guess I'll go support this guy. My boy Joe likes him, right? So, oh man. God, this is so painful to watch. It's like the best analysis I've ever seen from a CNN host. Like, hey, hold on now. They're saying more anti-war things. Okay, true, but it was incumbent on you guys to say that's not real. He's not actually anti-war. By the way, I would point out, it's also incumbent on Joe Rogan and all the other people who gave these politicians fluff jobs to say, hey, you say you're anti-war. Why is your record the exact opposite? And we didn't get that. It's like multiple institutional failures at every level that got us to this point. And it's just so fucking frustrating. Holy shit.
I was really struck at the Madison Square Garden rally. You had the Republican crowd cheering for people criticizing the Patriot Act and criticizing the Iraq War, which the RNC had been held at Madison Square Garden just 20 years before.
Again, I like how they figured this out after the fact. Holy shit, Trump pretending to be anti-war may have worked to get him new voters. Damn, that's crazy. Yeah, it is. So why didn't you guys say every time he opened his mouth, that is not true? Here's the reality. He is not anti-war. He is a liar. Why didn't you do that? They just let all of that shit slide. And now in retrospect, they're like, fuck, he pretended to be anti-war. That's crazy. That worked. Yeah, it was always a good strategy, but you guys needed to be there to check him. And the fucking podcast idiots who interviewed him needed to be there to check him, and nobody was there to check him. I think we are one of maybe 4 shows in the entire country, both in new media and old media, that ever would point out his actual foreign policy record. Oh my God. I'm going to give myself an aneurysm before the end of this show, bro. I really am. All right. Here we go. We got more. This one's MSNBC.
And I think if we're going to get a woman elected president, and we can do this in the generic terms now because it is going to be generic from now on, I think it might have to be a more conservative Democrat, a more conservative Republican. I think like Margaret Thatcher and Merkel and people like that, you want, and maybe Hillary was right. She had to be a little tougher on war issues because...
Oh my God. This is literally the exact opposite analysis. The analysis from CNN was way better. We were like, hey, he kind of said he was anti-war. Maybe that helped with these groups. This is Chris Matthews being like, if we elect a woman, she better be a real tough broad. Hillary was probably too dovish. Hillary was too dovish. Hillary was super hawkish. Again, 2016 is another example where Trump outflanked Hillary on her left when it came to issues of war and peace. Remember that? He pretended to be against the Iraq war, and he attacked Hillary for it. If anything, his analysis is exactly backwards. Hillary needed to be the one with the bold, non-interventionist vision of like, hey, we wasted all this money overseas, too many people are dying, let's rebuild this country. He takes the exact wrong lesson. And his lesson is, obviously the only way a woman can win is she's got to be super right-wing. Like, okay, I get it. All of these people, in retrospect, are going to look back and be like, hey, let's be more like Trump. But what if I were to tell you Republicans win by acting like Republicans and Democrats win by acting like Democrats? I mean, this is the classic example of this is Bush versus Kerry. That was an election where, it was during the Iraq war and Afghanistan war, the beginning of it, and Bush was like, I'm a Republican and I will defend us. And Kerry was like, I'm half a Republican and I'll defend us smarter than him. And he lost, right? You need a bold countervision. God, this is, I'm truly going to have a conniption before this segment is over. Good googly moogly. I'm going to lose my mind, y'all. I'm going to lose my fucking mind. Oh, Chris Matthews, please stop saying stupid things. Please say slightly less stupid things.
Maybe Hillary was right. She had to be a little tougher on war issues because if you're going to run as a woman, you can't be, all 3 strikes can't be against you. Woman of color, that you're a woman and that you're weak on defense or weak on spending. The Democrats have got to stop all this spending.
Oh, my God. So Kamala is, quote, weak on defense. That was a problem for Kamala. Really? Remember when she delivered the line like 400 times that she wants the most lethal military on planet Earth? Maybe the problem was the exact opposite of what you're saying, Chris Matthews. Maybe it would have helped her with Arab American voters and Muslim American voters if she came out unequivocally for cutting off arms to Israel. Maybe it would have helped her if she dropped the most lethal military in the world line. Oh my God. And then he's just going down all the Republican talking points. Democrats really spent too much. Oh, did they? Interesting, because as soon as we got the end of the pandemic era social safety net programs, when those went away, Biden's approval rating dropped colossally. Weird how that works. It's almost like when people were getting money and were getting support, that's when Democrats were more popular. And when they cut off the support, it went the other way. So maybe the spending actually isn't the problem. Maybe that's the exact opposite of the problem. Holy shit. If anything, they need to spend more. He's arguing spend less. Austerity is wildly unpopular. Wildly unpopular. By the way, we're about to find that out because the Republicans are going to do that, and watch what happens to their approval when they do it.
My wife loves to argue. She's a big Democrat. She says, the economy's in great shape. I said, yeah, the more government spends money, the more it does, the more it jacks up prices. It just does. Yeah. That's what you do during a recession.
He has no idea what he's talking about. No idea what he's talking about. Oh, more money, more inflation. That is not true at all. Read any of the academic economic literature on this. Greedflation. Originally, it was the supply chain was the problem. Then it was greedflation, namely corporations jacking up prices because they can get away with it because there's a fear of inflation. So they would just jack up prices to make more profit and tell you, we got to do it. That's what the problem was. It wasn't government spending. Government spending in the midst of a pandemic, when everything is shut down, they are the spender of last resort to save people's lives and make sure they get food and make sure they can pay their bills. And he's saying you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, okay, so what? Let people starve in the middle of the pandemic? Oh my God, I hate this man.
If you spend more money, the prices of things go up, and that's a fact. And the Democrats never addressed that. They just went right past the graveyard and said, "Oh no, we don't know how this inflation came to be. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
We don't understand the border price." Yes, we do.
Inflation came down, you fucking idiot. Oh my God. The Democrats passed a thing called the Inflation Reduction Act. And by the way, let's be clear. I was wrong about that early on because I was like, this isn't going to impact inflation one way or the other. I mean, it's just a gimmicky name. It's got nothing to do with inflation. Turns out I was wrong. It actually did reduce inflation massively. But here he is. He's making the exact wrong argument. And by the way, if his argument was true, it would also apply to Trump. Trump did big spending during the pandemic too, but you're not attacking him for that. He just won.
As a guy said to me, why does the little man love his country? Because it's all he's got. And if you're down in the dumps and you see your country being overrun from people from another country who just decide to come in for economic reasons, you're going to get mad about that. You're saying, wait a minute, the only thing I got is my country.
Yeah.
He literally goes after Democrats and uses the argument here that like they're doing open borders. Chris Matthews, they are not doing open borders. And by the way, you are just validating every hack right-wing talking point. Yes, Chris, their narrative is immigrants are the cause of all your problems. I got news for you, Chris. That is not the cause of anybody's fucking problems. Again, as we're about to find out, he's going to do some fucking mass deportation, and let's see how that goes, right? Let's see how people feel when the pictures and the videos of that come out and how they feel when the economy takes a massive hit. Let's see how they feel. He's just validating every right-wing talking point. Chris Matthews, you're bringing up like they have open borders. Do you have anything to say about the fact that the Democrats deported more than Trump, both as a raw number and a percentage under this administration? You have anything to say about that? They always talk about the other half of the picture. Hey, there was a massive surge of people in here, so more people are coming in. True. Why do you never talk about the other portion? Why do you never talk about the other part where they deported more people than the Trump administration? You don't bring that up at all. These people are all political hacks. Holy fucking shit.
And you live in Philly or you live in Washington, D.C., and you've got police forces that can't keep cops on the force right now. And over the past 3-4 years, crime has been everywhere.
That didn't even register for top reasons people were voting. It had nothing to do with police, had nothing to do with crime. This is like a dog whistle of, those crazy Democrats are for defund the police. Virtually none of the Democrats are for defund. Like 98% of the Democrats are not for defund the police. All right, I'm losing it. Here we got Richie Torres. Oh, this is going to be good. Ready? Donald Trump has no greater friend than the far left, which has managed to alienate historic numbers of Latinos, blacks, Asians, and Jews from the Democratic Party with absurdities like defund the police or from the river to the sea or Latinx. Kamala got landslided. Did she say defund the police? No. She was a cop. Did she say from the river to the sea? No. She's super pro-Israel. Did she ever say Latinx? No. Did she mention her race at all? No. Did she mention her gender at all? No. What she did is ran on USA and freedom and patriotism and said, I'm here to represent all Americans. This has nothing to do with personal identity. She said all those things, and she lost. So what you're doing here is taking your priors, Richie Torres, your prior held beliefs, and you're going, oh, I'm just going to use this as a rationalization and a justification to go after the people I don't like. And for him, that's the far left. Well, what a convenient thing for him to believe, since he's not a member of the so-called far left. He's a very right-wing Democrat. By the way, he was in swing states campaigning for Kamala. Why don't you deserve some of the blame? Why don't you deserve it? You clearly failed. You clearly didn't do your job right. He continues, there is more to lose than there is to gain politically from pandering to a far left that is more representative of Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok than it is of the real world. The working class is not buying the ivory towered nonsense that the far left is selling. Again, to be clear, the shit he says that effectively that lost this election for Democrats is defund the police, which 99% Democrats were not running on that, not saying that. This is something that was like a 3 or 4 year old thing that died off pretty quickly. So he's blaming defund the police from the river to the sea, which again, no elected Democrat is even saying, and Latinx, which no elected Democrat is even saying. You guys always knew this was going to happen, right? To them, it doesn't matter that Kamala Harris was parading around the country with Liz Cheney and thanking Dick Cheney for his service and embracing Republicans at every turn. They're still going to look at the results and go, the problem is she didn't go right-wing enough. That's the problem. All right, let's keep going. What's this one? This one's more MSNBC. Here we go.
We have learned that there is not an opposing party to the Republicans. The Democrats need to clear out the entire leadership group and build it from the ground up again because they failed at every level they could fail at last night.
You feel that the Democratic Party...
Hello. Okay. W. Kamau Bell. That's true.
Should be essentially, stripped and start anew. What would that new Democratic Party look like, and what would it be? What are the differences in what the traditional Democratic Party be?
Well, take a note from the Republicans. Play to your base. Kamala Harris did not play to her base in this election, and I say that as somebody who lives where Kamala Harris is from, Oakland, California. She did not play to the values that she grew up raised with here in Oakland, California, in Berkeley, California. The fact that she didn't do a rally here shows that she knew that, and she played. The fact that you picked two of the least popular Republicans to talk to, campaign with, Dick and Liz Cheney, shows that you're not playing to your base. And I respect.
Bro, is this truth coming across on MSNBC? Is this truth? Wow. Now, look, by the way, to be fair, Kamala did run a much better campaign than Hillary. She just did. She did run on some genuinely good things. $6,000 child tax credit, reducing medical debt, making Medicare cover home care, picking Tim Walz, who did free school breakfast and lunch for kids, paid family leave, paid medical leave. I want to be fair to her. She actually did pick some good economic stuff to run on, some populist stuff to run on. There was some semblance of saying, hey, here you go, base. And I want to give her credit for that. But he's right about the Liz Cheney thing and the Dick Cheney thing and the, you are not pandering to the Democratic base and throwing red meat to the Democratic base anywhere remotely close to how much and how often Trump and the Republicans do it for their base. And let's be clear, that strategy worked for the Republicans. So the idea that the Democrats should just become more like Republicans, no, a half Republican is never going to beat a full Republican. Republican light is never going to beat Republican original. You need to be full Democrat, right? You need to go just as hard for your base as they go for their own base. Totally opposite counter narrative, counter message. And that, obviously, she didn't try it, right? So, all right, let's keep going. I love this, though. This one's actually making my blood pressure come back down ski.
Kamala Harris, it's got to be hard right now, but you have to play to your base. And the base of the party is young, it is progressive, it is left leaning, it cares about Gaza. And they, by not bringing a Palestinian on stage to the DNC, by talking about we want to have the most lethal fighting force in the country, these are not the base values of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, you know what? There will be an autopsy after this. And in that autopsy, I think we all know who's going to be blamed. It's going to be the left is going to be blamed because the left is always blamed. That's how this works. That's how this game is played. So anyway, thank God for W. Kamau Bell. His analysis is generally right. And by the way, hang in there till the end of this segment because I'm going to give you my full breakdown, right, as to how Democrats can run and will win if they do what I explain in a little bit. All right, let's keep going. Now we go to Chuck Todd, Human Oatmeal. That's my nickname for him. He's like Human Oatmeal. Here he is on NBC, and he says the following.
I think Fetterman could end up being an interesting sort of North Star for the party. Right. He's a guy who's figured out how to win. He was basically a working class Democrat that has stayed a Democrat. Well, essentially, all of his brethren where he grew up are clearly have moved towards Trump. So I think Fetterman could end up playing a pretty big role in whatever the party's gonna, wherever they're going to next, because Fetterman seems to get it a little bit more. He's look where he was in Israel too. So he's not been a predictable politician.
Oh my God, he's using the fact that John Fetterman was the most pro-genocide Democrat as like a positive for him. So here, let me tell you what Chuck Todd's idiot brain has concluded. Well, Trump is like an old white guy with a shitty brain. So why don't we pick our own schlubby old white guy with a shitty brain? Like, literally all he's seeing right here, let's be clear. Trump is a white dude and he won. Why don't we run the whitest white dude of all time who goes around Congress wearing shorts and a fucking hoodie, right? He's falling for the gimmick that is John Fetterman. We were just talking about how Democrats need to expand their base and hold their base and need to get more people interested in what they're saying, throw red meat. Fetterman is the exact opposite. All he's done since he's gotten in office is pander to Republicans. That's all he's done. Oh, it's all an immigration. I think they're right. Oh, Trump is absolutely beloved in Pennsylvania. He's probably going to win there. Oh, let me criticize Kamala Harris for doing basic, bare minimum, both sides rhetoric on the issue of Gaza. No, you should be more pro-Israel. He could not be more wrong in every part of this. Fetterman will get blown the fuck out. Jesus Christ. Okay. All right. We got more. Please give me a good one. Is this a good one or a bad one? Let's see.
Be the final word here in this segment about lessons learned for Democrats and now what the next 4 years look like.
The progressive era should be over if they want to start winning again.
Wow, there's that.
Peter Baker?
Peter, final thoughts this morning.
Top that.
The progressive era should be over if they want to win again. Kamala Harris used hawkish rhetoric on the campaign trail, and that was bad. Kamala Harris, her retort on the issue of immigration and the border to Trump was, I'm actually hard on immigration. You blocked the bill that would have cracked down on immigration. So I'm real about securing the border and locking it down. You're not actually in favor of it. Is that progressive? Is that progressive? That's the problem? Is that stuff? That's what she's saying. That's what she's doing. Parading around with Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney. That's progressive? Why don't you be specific about what you think the problems are with how she ran? Be specific. Because it sounds to me like what you're saying is go even further right on immigration, go even further right on foreign policy, cut more spending and cut social safety nets more. Basically, just be Republicans and then you'll win. This is... all these political creatures disgust me. The idea of actually believing in making a better world and trying to implement it and running on that and standing on that and having a spine, that literally never fucking occurs to them. Because it's all a game to people like this. Says, oh, we need to make sure the progressive era comes to an end if Democrats want to win. I was unaware the progressive era began, right? Look, to be fair to Joe Biden, there were some genuinely good economic things. The NLRB has been very pro-union. You know, he sent out those $1,400 checks during the pandemic. He increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour for federal government contractors and workers, which is, the Republicans never do that. The Inflation Reduction Act had some genuinely good provisions in there, created 800,000 manufacturing jobs. There are some good things, right? It was a slight break from the neoliberal consensus. But Kamala loses, and now they're like, well, just go harder back to the neoliberal consensus instead of going further and doing a clean break with the neoliberal consensus. So, look, but I don't know why I get all worked up. You guys knew this was going to be the result. You knew this was going to be the result. The Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney strategy objectively failed, and they're not reckoning with that at all. Nobody's saying, hey, that's bad. Trump won 94% of Republicans in 2020. You know how many of them he won in 2024? 94%. They couldn't even scrape away a single point among Republican voters. And her brilliant idea is go further towards the Republicans. Why? So instead of getting 94% of their own voters, next time they'll get 97%, and you'll piss off more of your own base and make them not come out. So this is the opposite of W. Kamau Bell's reading of the situation, and this is horrible. All right, can I get a good one? Can I get a good one? All right, here we go.
I think this is the leftovers of the 2016 kind of mess, that there were all of these issues that the Democratic Party saw laid out very clearly in 2016 after Hillary Clinton's loss, and that rather than address those issues, they moved and they migrated. What happened is that the pandemic, right? The pandemic came upon us, and Joe Biden happened to be the person for the pandemic. And I think they mistook that moment for a referendum on what the Democrats had to offer, rather than being introspective. I'll tell you one other person who I think is going to be incredibly important. Actually, two other people. The first person is Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Bernie Sanders has been saying since at least 2014 has been about how the Democratic Party, if it wants to keep these coalitions, needs to talk about bread and butter issues. It needs to talk about politics. A lot of people attacked him for that, saying, well, are you saying that cultural politics don't matter? That's not what he was saying. He was saying we need to focus on these things. The other person is Stacey Abrams. We have not heard a lot from Stacey Abrams in this election cycle, but her organizations, particularly Fair Fight, the New Georgia Voter Project, and other organizations were instrumental in pulling together coalitions that ended up winning Joe Biden, Georgia in 2020, but also Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
That actually wasn't bad. That analysis wasn't bad. I'm actually shocked anybody on CNN gave Bernie Sanders credit, basically saying that guy kind of had the right idea and the rest of you didn't. I'll take it. I'll take that. All right, so now let me give you my full breakdown here as to the lessons I take away, right? I see a lot of people coming with really hardcore conclusions and standing on it. And I got to be honest, most of the stuff I see people saying, I just flat out disagree with, right? But let me give you my breakdown of the situation. So there's a general problem for Kamala and the Democrats to discuss. Then there's a stylistic problem. Then there's an overarching problem, okay? Let's go one by one. The general problem in this election, was, look, it's an anti-incumbent election. And on that, I don't want to say there's nothing you could do about it, right? But there's almost nothing you can do about it. Literally the only thing you could do about it, which isn't even possible, would be to hop in the time machine, go back in time, and really substantively address people's material conditions so it is not an anti-incumbent election, right? And so that would have meant bigger, bolder change where people really feel like their lives have improved. And, you know, if the Democrats had done full universal health care, right, or had done some semblance of a universal basic income or social security for all, or had raised wages, if they had done real economic reform that genuinely impacted people's wallets and pocketbooks, I think in that scenario, you wouldn't see an anti-incumbent election. It would be more like an FDR type situation where he won the presidency 4 times because he really delivered materially for the American people, right? So, but the Democrats didn't really they did some decent things. I don't want to be too hard on them. They created 800,000 manufacturing jobs. Trump outsourced 200,000 manufacturing jobs. That matters, right? There's a real difference between Democrats and Republicans. But they clearly didn't do enough. And so the general problem for both Kamala and the Democrats, who all got draxed, is that this was an anti-incumbent election. And so as long as that was hanging around your neck, it was going to be a tall fucking mountain to climb, and no tweaking of messaging here or there or strategy here or there would have changed it, right? So anti-incumbent election, the only thing you could have done to avoid that is actually do really bold policy to fix people's material conditions beforehand. You didn't really fully do that. As a direct result of that, it was just a change election. Okay, that's point number 1. The second problem they have is stylistic, if I'm being honest, right? So the stylistic problem is, in today's era, if you are too polished as a politician or too professional as a politician, you're going to lose. Because this is clearly the era of the more raw and unfiltered and shoot from the hip kind of politician. The ones that feel more authentic. To the American public, I think it's now clear to say, to the American public, polished and professional reads as inauthentic and insincere, and unpolished and unprofessional reads as authentic and sincere. This is the social media era, right? This is the online news era. And to really break through and get people to trust you, you just can't be politician-y. You just can't. So I do think she had that cutting against her, even though, like I said, there were some policies that she was running on that I thought were genuinely good. But it didn't really break through because people look at her and they go, I don't fucking believe you. You're a standard politician. Why should I believe you? So that's their stylistic issue. And the other thing that nobody talks about vis-a-vis Trump, but it really is the elephant in the room as to something that genuinely and sincerely helps him tremendously in these elections. He is, number 1, extremely charismatic. That always helps for a politician, right? He feels authentic. He's not. He's a liar. But he's extremely charismatic. The other thing is, he's fucking controversial. And historically, you think of controversy in politics as bad. What if I told you that has now flipped? And now controversy is a good thing because you get people talking about you all the time, right? And then the other thing is, like, he's a celebrity. And this country's obsessed with celebrities. And that kind of helps him. I call it the 3 C's. Controversial, charismatic, and a celebrity. So, I mean, I know it sounds sort of like silly, but the Democrats kind of need their own controversial, charismatic celebrity. That's why I like the idea of Jon Stewart running in 2028. Okay, and then finally, this is what I call the overarching problem. And this is the one that Democrats really are just getting their lunch eaten at. Democrats don't have a narrative. So Republicans, even though their narrative is gross and wrong and incorrect, they definitely have a narrative. The narrative is immigrants are the problem and elite liberals are the problem. Blame them for all of your problems. Here's 784 talking points as to why the immigrants and the elite liberals are the problem. All day, every day, anything any conservative says when they open their mouth is effectively, fuck the immigrants, fuck the elite liberals, they're causing all the problems. That is called driving home a narrative. Now, it's an incorrect narrative, it's an untrue narrative, but it's a narrative nonetheless. And it also places Trump as the protagonist in the main story. He's the protagonist. You know who the enemies are. It's the elite liberals. It's the deep state. It's the immigrants. And he's crusading for you, and he has to crusade against them to save you. This is his narrative, right? And in the midst of building that narrative, they lie all the time, and they say things that are untrue, and they skew facts, and on and on and on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that didn't matter to the American people, because many of them thought, there's a story, there's a narrative, that's what he's selling. I kind of feel like he's looking out for me in the midst of all that and going against the bad guys, right? The Democrats have no narrative, none. They are what I would describe as technocratic elites, right? And so the idea is, let me give you my list of tweaks to the system that would maybe improve your life, and here, support me, and if you don't, you're an idiot. Look at the list I just gave you, right? That's kind of the gist of it. We're technocratic, we're academic, we believe in the experts, right? Well, at a time of low trust in our society, the experts are not going to be viewed favorably because the experts have let people down their entire lives, right? So how do you counter that Republican narrative? Well, first things first, if their narrative is the immigrants are the problem and the elite liberals are the problem, you better bet your ass you flip that back on them and say, actually, it's the elite conservatives are the problem, right? And you undermine that narrative when you're fucking gallivanting around with Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney. All of a sudden, Republicans are a threat to democracy. It's like, really? You're campaigning with them? Seriously? That doesn't really work, right? So the narrative for Democrats has to be, elite Republicans are the problem, and it's not the immigrants that are the problem, it's the big donor corruption that's the problem. It's the corporations. It's the billionaires. It's the wealthy people putting tremendous amounts of money into politics to buy politicians so that they do their bidding and they don't do your bidding. Why are your wages low? Look at the big money donors. Why is your healthcare shitty? Look at the big money donors. Why have you not gotten a raise in a really long time? Look at the big money donors. And you go down the list, right? Like, that's the argument. The argument is the reason you're struggling, the reason your life is not going well right now is because you are being held back by the corruption in our system brought about by corporations and billionaires. And I'm going to fight for you and protect you against those nefarious elements. I'm going to take them head on. I am your crusader in this battle, right? That's what you got to do, bro. That's what you got to do. And it's not just that the Democrats have a bad narrative, it's that they don't have any narrative. There is no narrative. There is no story where they are the protagonist fighting for you. There is no story. Like I said, it's technocratic elitism. And look, again, I want to be fair. Her list of policies was 1,000,000 times better than Trump's. But if you don't take those list of policies and embed it in a broader narrative, clearly nobody gives a fuck. Because the story he's telling is more compelling. Oh, you got all these problems, blame the immigrants, blame the elite liberals, right? So you need to say, blame the elite conservatives, blame the big money donors. They're the real problem. It's not the immigrants. The immigrants are in the same boat as you. And make an argument for them. So there it is. Like that's the breakdown, right? That's the breakdown. But it's hard for the Democrats to use that narrative when they are also kind of beholden to the big money donors. And they are. Less so than the Republicans. It's sort of a slightly different set of donors than the Republicans, but they are also corrupt. And they're really not going to take corruption head on when that's what feeds the system and has gotten them their careers and their campaign contributions. And so that's the problem, right? You're not going to be able to create a compelling narrative when you're in bed with the evildoers in the narrative, right? And it's not going to happen. And so anyway, those are the things you have to address if you want Democrats to win. And some of this stuff I showed you was decent commentary in mainstream media, but most of it was bad. And most of all the reasons you're going to hear as to why Kamala lost moving forward are going to be bad, and they're going to be wrong. And people are going to take away the wrong conclusions. And it's a real fucking shame. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.